Welcome to the Kate Molland channel. My podcast is now in progress. Let's tune in. Women like the women that you're describing, though, are the ones that are ruining men for other women, though, because they are creating this reality for men that they see that it's like, okay, this woman is only dating me for this status level. She's going to dump me for a man of a higher status level. So because a man has now experienced that woman has ruined that man for the next woman.
You could say the same about women in a different way, because women allow themselves to be ruined for the next guy. For example, you get these girls who rush into a marriage, pop a couple of babies, the chemistry wears off, she realizes she doesn't like the guy anymore. Now she wants to get another guy. Now you expect me to come into your life with, you got 2 kids that are not even mine. That means I'm going to have to marry you and your ex because he's going to be supporting the kids. So, and that's one way in which a girl can make it difficult for her to where a guy can find going overseas more appealing because it's the population of women in these different countries are endless, and a lot of them don't have children. A lot of them are single. And to them, a wife is a wife. They're not really concerned about the culture, the language. They can get into that, a lot of them feel. I don't know, maybe they can, maybe they can't. But they will see when they get there. But I also can say that there are a lot of women that give up sex too soon. And when they give up sex too soon, what happens is men, it's like women are a lot like cars. They're only more valuable when they have less mileage on them. So the more mileage a woman has on her, her value goes down. Now, that's how men are thinking. Now, you get some men say, well, what about men who do the same thing? Well, men couldn't be like that if women didn't give themselves up, because everybody knows that women are the gatekeepers of sex. So if women are constantly giving away sex to test drive men and getting all of this sex mileage, that's not really a turn on to men. It just isn't. And not only that, but there are some stats, I don't know how truthful those stats are, where the more sex a woman has and the more body count she has, the less she can emotionally attach to a man. And there are men that are saying that, hey, I've been with a girl who has a huge body count and she's not really emotionally bonding with me. Now, I don't know how much truth there is in that, but it is a topic for discussion. But going back to the lone zone, again, whether they're a passport bro, whether they're a MGTOW or an incel. Now, the incels are the men who are involuntarily celibate, but they want to be in relationships, so I would put them in the lone zone. But the focus here would be on women, because I see a lot of women on the Steve Harvey show that are asking Steve, like, what can I do to get into a relationship? What can I do to find my true love? You have women in churches that are asking their pastors, that are praying, attending church regularly, looking for a husband. Some that are single and don't have a lot of mileage, that don't even have children, that still can't find a mate. So in the 7 love zones, I'm saying to them, first acknowledge the problem, that you are single. Never mind what all these men are doing. Never mind all these arguments on TikTok and all this going back and forth on YouTube or whatever the case may be. Look at your life and own it. You are single. You do not want to be single. Now, my qualification for someone that is in the lone zone does 2 things. They acknowledge that they are single, and in that singleness, they acknowledge that they want to be in a long-term relationship. My outline for the 7 love zones is exclusively for anyone that wants to be in a long-term relationship. This is not 7 love zones to a hookup. This is not 7 love zones to a one-night stand. This is 7 love zones to the long-term relationship, which I call the LTR. Are we clear? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, this is the long-term relationship, not the Tinder.
Exactly, the long-term relationship. So, number 1, acknowledgement that you want a long-term relationship. That's it. Just acknowledge that part. And you are involuntarily single. Now, here's the second part of that component for being in the love zone. You want to apply principles to get out. Not read a book on it or listen to Steve Harvey tapes or any YouTube videos. You've got to be willing to apply the principles to get out. Then you're not in the love zone that I'm talking about. You're in some lost zone.
Oh, goodness. So, but you have to apply principles to get out.
Exactly. So let's establish what the lone zone is. And I want to make sure that our viewers understand it. or our listeners understand it, because I'd like you to reiterate it to me. Number one, recognizing that you are involuntarily single and you want to be in a long-term relationship. I would like right now to talk about the first three components of love zone number one, that if a person can acknowledge this, they're on their way to the remaining six. Now, the first love zone is this, the lone love zone. Component number one, acknowledge that you are involuntarily single and you do not want to be single. Number two, you want to be in a long-term relationship. Not a hookup, not a one-night stand. You want to be in a long-term relationship. Number three, you are going to apply the principles necessary to get out of the lone zone to move into love zone number two. Now, I'm going to repeat that one more time. These are the three components of love zone number one. A, you must acknowledge that you are involuntarily single against your will and you want to be in a loving relationship. Acknowledge that. Number two, the type of relationship you want to be in must be long-term. It must be a long-term loving relationship, not a temporary loving relationship. Not a relationship that's going to get you through some hard times, but a long-term relationship. That's what these strategies are for. And number three is you must apply, not be willing to apply. There's a big difference between willing to apply the principles and applying the principles. So you must be applying the principles that are outlined in the 7 love zones, and you're on your way from this amazing transition of being trapped in the lone zone and arriving in your long-term relationship. Now, if I made that clear, see if you can repeat that back to me. What are the 3 components that make up the lone love zone?
Okay, so the lone love zone. You would be involuntarily single and acknowledging that fact and that you want to be in a long-term relationship.
That's number 2, yes.
And you have to apply principles to get you out of the lone love zone.
Right, so you can go from love zone 1 all the way to love zone 7, where you have your happily ever after.
Okay.
Now remember, the happily ever after that I define is not the happily ever after that is in a fictitious story. There are 2 types of happily ever afters. There's the happily ever after of a fairy tale, then there's the happily ever after in reality. So we're talking about the happily ever after in reality, and I'm not going to disclose what the happily ever after in reality is at this time until we get to love zone number 7.
Okay, so we have established what love zone number 1 is, being the lone love zone. If they apply the principles, where do they end up? What is love zone number 2?
That's a very good question, and we are out of time. I'm looking at your clock there, so we're either going to have to pick this up and include some of this stuff in your DIY talks, because you have a lot of wonderful do-it-yourself home tips, repair tips, and home improvement tips that I'm anxious to see you share, because we're all property owners and we can all benefit from your expertise. And then down the road, we can keep maybe throwing some of this love zone stuff in.
Okay, I do like the love zone talk. I find it to be very informative, and I'm reflecting also, so that's important.
Excellent, because that is exactly what I would love for your viewers to do, and including you, because you sound like you're interested yourself.
I am. And I feel that, not to get too much commentary, but I see friends of mine who are in the lone love zone, but they would tell themselves that they're not involuntarily single. They would say that they don't like their choices, and they're choosing to be single because they don't like their choices.
They probably wouldn't qualify to be in the lone love zone that I'm talking about, because the lone love zone that I'm talking about requires honesty.
That's what I think I'm seeing now when I pull back. That's what I feel like I'm seeing, is that they're not being honest with themselves. That's their workaround so that they don't feel like they're involuntarily single. It's, no, I made this choice because I don't like my options.
And my response to that is self-deception is not going to work. That's going to hurt you all through the 7 love zones. So honesty is very, very important. So, good conversation.
Such a great conversation, Jason.
Looking forward to the next one.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much.
Hasta luego.